Great. So we're going to be using this learning space as our home base. I know that we did access this during our first session, so this should be fairly familiar to you. But for our sessions today, we're going to be using this sidebar. We're in session 2A. So you'll notice that in our menu of options, we have additional links where we can find additional resources. So specifically, you may have accessed the session 2A pre-reading, and session 2A is going to be where you can access all of our resources for today's sessions. You'll get to this page where you can find our priority topics. Go ahead and go into priority topic 5, and we're going to make a copy of the handout. So I'll model that super quickly. If you are on the learning space, which is, using the link that Gloria put in the chat, the Google site link. If you go into session 2A, right in here, or you can scroll down and find session 2A and this button. Either one works. You can find this page where we'll go into priority topic 5 module. So with this page, you can find our attendance survey if you need that link again. You can also follow along with our slides right here, pop that out and follow along with any resources and links that are embedded in the deck, as well as to save it for any of your colleagues who maybe want to keep this for your future reference. We are going to be using this handout to access some links and some resources. So if you pop that out using that top right arrow, go ahead and click on File, make a copy so that you are able to take some notes on your personal copy of this document. I'll give most people, looks like most people are starting to access this handout. I'll give you a couple of minutes to access the handout, to make a copy, and to get your attendance surveys all the way complete. Okay, moving right along, we're going to quick check that we have everything we need, and we'll jump into our content for today. So just a quick check that we have everything that we need to have it set up. We have our Zoom video on, microphones off, and if you have your LEA in your Zoom screen name, super helpful for us as we're assigning breakout rooms. You have your handout ready to take some notes. And you also have the learning space, which is where we will access some of the documents and resources that we'll be looking at today. So quick thumbs up if you have all 3 of these completed: setting up your Zoom screen, getting your handout, and accessing the learning space. Seeing a couple of thumbs up. Perfect. All right. I know it's hard to see everybody at the same time, but I scrolled through. All right, a couple of people don't have the handout quite yet, so we'll give just another minute or two, and I'll model how to get that handout one more time. So from the learning space page that Gloria had put in the chat, we're going to find session 2A. So you can either scroll down or you can use the sidebar menu for session 2A. That's going to bring us to this page. We are here for priority topic 5. So we're at tier 2 and tier 3. So we're going to click into here. And this is where you can find the attendance survey. In case you are joining just now, you can fill out the attendance survey. You can follow along on the slides, and you can also make a copy of this handout. So with the arrow in the top right, you can pop it out, click on File, and make a copy. And this will help you to take some notes, again, just some to record some key takeaways from today's session so that you can bring that back and support with your planning time. Okay, so we'll go ahead. If you have any specific questions from here, definitely ask Gloria. She can be a great resource for, supporting with some tech issues or any questions that you have one-on-one. So you can send her a chat message. But let's go ahead and get started so that we can, maximize our time and get going together. We definitely appreciate that it can be tricky, especially, if you're embedded in your school locations right now. It can be really tricky to engage in a virtual meeting, and especially for 3 hours. So we do ask that, to the best extent possible, that you adopt these professional learning norms with us today. So we're adopting a growth mindset, thinking of how we can, constantly improve and learn and grow. We're engaging respectfully with ourselves and with each other. We are all in, we are here for a really important reason. And, there's lots of things that we can learn from being with all of these great educators and leaders with us today. Maybe most importantly, we're remaining student-centered. So thinking about what can we bring back to provide for our students so that they have the best instruction and leadership that we can offer them. And some logistical norms, just again, keeping cameras on as much as possible and proactively communicating if you do need to step away or turn off your camera. So we definitely understand that things come up, especially in your school buildings, but we would love to know, if you need a moment to step away. Okay, so with regrounding in the big picture, we're thinking about this 2-year this cohort, and thinking about, how are we playing a role in improving literacy outcomes in our schools and in our LEAs. So with this project, our main goal is to, we have 3 goals. Our main goal is to improve literacy outcomes so that we have 70% of our 3rd graders reading on grade level by 2027. So we are going to focus on doing that through these 3 learning intentions, these 3 really big goals of this cohort. So first, we're going to really utilize our P through 12 literacy framework so that we have a really deep understanding of high quality implementation of science of reading and the science of reading instruction. We're also going to be able to create and implement plans that are literacy based that can improve our practices, again, resulting in improved early literacy outcomes aligned to SB 127. And finally, our 3rd learning intention is to leverage these change management principles and practices as you do implement your plans and have these necessary shifts to align to the science of reading and the science of reading instruction within your LEAs and your schools. So by the end of today, we'll be able to explore the priority topic that you've selected from your needs assessment, again, to support the ongoing implementation of the science of reading at your school or your LEA. We'll also use this understanding and some new additional tools and resources, and we'll apply that to a hypothetical scenario, but we'll also apply it to your real context so that you can get into some planning later this morning. And finally, we'll apply some of this knowledge of the priority topic to identify some specific changes and put that into an action plan for our teams. So we've talked about the cycle of this process and the tools used in this cohort. At session 1, we completed the needs assessment. Maybe you've been revisiting this with your colleagues, using the deep dive guide to identify specific resources that you can be using to select strategies that will help your team implement new learning and strategies for your goals. And today is where we're really going to get to dive into our change management plan. So we'll be focusing on supporting part 1 of your plan so that you can, put your goals into motion and make some changes within your schools that are tied to the science of reading. I think one thing I will mention here, and we've mentioned it already, at session 1, is that, this doesn't necessarily lead to the creation of new literacy goals, but definitely considering how different levers, such as Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction, can help your students reach your existing literacy goals from your district or for your school. Okay, so a brief overview of the morning, and we are on track, which is great. We're going to shortly get into building some content knowledge. So revisiting the article that we talked about, getting into some of the additional resources for priority topic 5. We'll have a break in the middle of the morning, and then we'll have some good time after the break to apply our learning to your context. So really getting to support planning for your school or your LEA. Okay, so we have our article that we had talked about with intensifying literacy instruction with the essential practices. So if you got a chance to read this, you likely read about, some infrastructures of how we can support, sorry, there's some messages going on so that we can, but we want to be able to support the infrastructures and the systems in place for creating strong Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction and intervention systems. So with this in mind, we would love for you to share in the chat some of your thoughts about the pre-reading. So we'll use this structure. In the chat, go ahead and share. Let's do first a word. So one word maybe that's captured your intention or has struck you as powerful. So for my word, as I was reading this, I really thought of the word infrastructure. But go ahead, we're going to put that in the chat. Think about a word that captured your attention.
Looks like Kip also agrees with you. Infrastructure. Nicole has intentional. Let's see, we have supports from Ronnie, data, deselecting, intervention. I think data is definitely an important one. Effective diagnostic assessments is huge because a lot of times we feel like we over assess our students. So having something that is effective and intentional. Oh, and someone put intentional, so that's good. Processes, evidence, processes, data. It's really some great words that go along with the article and with interventions ongoing, which is definitely something that is important when you are assessing and making sure that you're collecting the correct data for your students.
So thank you. Really great words in the chat. Definitely some great thoughts of how we can kind of sum up the importance of this data collection and how we can be using assessment and intervention for our students. All right, our next way to unpack the pre-reading is by thinking through a phrase. So is there something that was in the article that maybe engaged you, something you really agreed with, or something maybe you didn't agree with? I'll put my phrase in the chat.
Using data to make the best decisions possible. That's great. Process by which students are identified for and provided with specific intervention supports. Ongoing way to assist teachers in making best decisions. Developing, implementing processes to quickly and accurately place students into intervention. Establishing processes using the data. Again, there's definitely a lot of, repetition with that data and how important that is, especially when coming up with intervention groups that make sense for our students. Varied assessment is definitely something. Infrastructures to support student needs. Yeah, definitely some great phrases that really seem to be thought-provoking in terms of how we can support our students with interventions. Establishing processes for quickly identifying and removing barriers. That is definitely huge. There's lots of barriers with our students that sometimes we don't have control over.
Yeah, thank you for voicing over all of those thoughts, Gloria. Finally, for our last unpacking, we have our sentence. So maybe what is a sentence that captures the core idea of the text? So something that I was thinking about as I was reading this, kind of synthesizing all of the information, was thinking about, in order to get students the intervention and the support that they need, we need to understand what they need. So we're using systems of assessments and how we can and analyze student data in order to best understand what we can get to students. Right, additional thoughts?
We have another phrase of effective intervention, because obviously we want to see growth. We don't want to just have, extra practice just to have it. We want to make sure that it's effective and shows growth. Let's see, increase the quality and consistency among schools and how students are identified and supported in receiving increasingly intensive intervention. I think the two words that really stick out to me is quality and consistency. Both are very important when it comes to identifying students, and especially among schools. I worked in a district that it was kind of different in every school because we were such a large district. So that consistency among schools is definitely key. Designing and maintaining the school's intervention infrastructure that allows equitable access to effective intervention supports. That is definitely important, that equitable access, which unfortunately not all students have. Student data must be used in an ongoing way to assist teachers in making the best decisions possible to inform the provision of intervention supports. So definitely a lot of great feedback, Arcadia, from this article.
Yeah, fantastic. Great. I'm glad that this was,
Nicole said that Justin stole hers, but she said that she will also add using evidence-based practices in ways that will result in meaningful literacy outcomes for students with severe and persistent literacy needs. So great add in, Nicole.
fantastic.
Stole
Yeah,
yours.
yeah, lots of great thinking. Multiple ideas being stolen, but there's
Yeah.
enough insights for everyone, and excited
Yes.
to see how we can apply this to our school contexts. So we're going to move into building some content knowledge about this tier 2 and tier 3 instruction. We're going to get the opportunity to dig in and explore some resources from the USBE, as well as apply it to a hypothetical scenario. So we have roughly 75 minutes for this section, and then we'll take a quick break. And hopefully by the end of this portion of this morning, you will have some great resources to guide in your planning later this morning. So following along in your handout, we're just right here at the very top. You can use the table of contents to navigate to any parts of the handout that you need to get to, including some information about tier 2 and tier 3 instruction, with our application to context with our hypothetical scenario. But in the meantime, we're just kind of starting out. All right, can I get a volunteer to read our learning intention for this portion of the morning? So feel free to just come off of mute.
I'll do it. So that's, can
If
you hear me?
Nicole's
Thank you.
going to do it, then I'm going to come in and take it from her then. Go ahead.
Go for it, Justin. Participants will understand that Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction includes universal screening to identify students with specific reading skills gaps, and then providing differentiated instruction using evidence-based curriculum and instruction that targets the specific gaps identified. Participants will also understand the need for regular assessment to monitor progress and adjust intervention strategies.
Amazing. Thank you, Nicole. So for our success criteria for today, really aligned to our learning intention, we'll be able to describe some effective evidence-based Tier 2 and Tier 3 literacy instruction. We'll also be able to describe and talk about some effective structures for using that student data so that we can identify needs for students, align our instruction to those needs, and monitor progress using the relevant data measures. We'll finally be able to unpack and apply various tools, again, from the Utah State Board of Education for designing and implementing effective evidence-based and data-driven Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction. Okay, so with that, we have our hypothetical scenario. So can I get one more volunteer to read part 1 of our hypothetical scenario?
Okay, I'll grab that one. As the assistant principal of curriculum and instruction of Crestwood Academy, you support teachers in their efforts to provide differentiated instruction and intervention to struggling readers. In addition to a smoothly functioning 120-minute literacy block with rich Tier 1 instruction, your school has an MTSS period that is used for Tier 2 intervention. It's a good scenario. Oh, and then it goes bad.
Great. Yeah, okay. Well, thanks, Justin, for setting us up with some great stuff here. Let's have another volunteer to take us through to what happens here.
I'll read it. However, while
Thank you.
observing the teacher-led third grade RTI period with students working on morphology, you recently discovered that the instruction in some MTSS groups is haphazard and unplanned, leading to low rigor tasks and slow progress. Upon talking to the third grade teachers, you discovered the team has been using teacher-created materials and tasks that can be repeated from week to week rather than a systematic curriculum of targeted instruction. The teachers get defensive, saying they have no set curriculum for Tier 2 or 3 instructional time and no time to plan additional activities for every MTSS group. This sounds like you've been talking to my teachers. So what steps do you need to take to systematize Tier 2 instructional practices and ensure teachers are maximizing their MTSS time?
Great. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Justin. And thank you, Nicole, for sharing earlier. So as we're thinking about this scenario, it might be familiar, it might not. But if there's any familiar aspects, we're going to be thinking about this question here. What steps do you need to take to systematize Tier 2 instructional practices? So again, thinking about the importance of infrastructure and intentionality in utilizing effective Tier 2 and Tier 3 instructional time. So we're going to revisit this question in just a moment, but if you do have any thoughts, feel free to post them in the chat. But we're going to use this scenario kind of as a frame for the materials that we're going to look at today. So we'll have some time to build some background. We'll apply our learning to this hypothetical scenario, and hopefully we can support this assistant principal of curriculum and instruction, maybe help them get their third grade team back on track. And then we'll reflect on how we can apply this to our own contexts. Okay, so some guiding questions for our time today, and these were available in your pre-reading. So thinking about, what does evidence-based Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction look like when it is aligned to the science of reading and the science of reading instruction? We also need to think about, how can school leaders support the effective implementation of evidence-based Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction? So as we looked through our pre-reading as we are thinking about this hypothetical scenario, we're really thinking about, how do we use this evidence-based tier 2 and tier 3 instructional block and MTSS supports so that we can support the effective implementation of the science of reading within our school district or school buildings. So getting into, kind of what the article was talking to us about, just setting up systems and how we can systematize processes for, ensuring that students have the support that they need. We can kind of boil it down to the idea of multi-tiered systems of support. So the infrastructure and systems we need to get students the instruction and the assessment and learning that they need to be successful readers. So we know from the article that this really begins with screening students, understanding exactly what it is that they need to know in order to identify, the skill gaps and how we can maximize our instructional time, so that we understand what students come in with and what they need support with. We can then use differentiation in our tier 1 instructional block, so that we can, get students the information they need in the way that they need it. So whether that's skill gaps, whether that's, multiple modes of instruction. So using speaking, reading, writing, and listening, all of those different language domains so that we can be supporting, a full, well-rounded literacy for all of our students. We also need to design and provide intensive, regular small group instruction. So, this is going to be information that we get from differentiation, from that constant assessment and short-term assessment so that we understand exactly what students need to know. Like I said, monitoring progress frequently. So using those short-term assessments, understanding, exactly the state of students' learning, whether that's, having phonics screeners regularly updating so that we understand, which letters maybe our students not understanding, how are they connecting that to sound, how can we be measuring fluency. So all of these progress monitoring methods are going to be really helpful when they're used really frequently. And finally, adding in daily intensive instruction for the students who do need it. So with all of this, a common theme is using data. So we do need to have systems in place so that we can understand what students need, and we do that through using data. So I will say, just as is the case with tier 1, and as we think about our literacy blocks, tier 2 and tier 3 instruction should also be rooted in the science of reading and the science of reading instruction, with the curriculum that we use and in teachers' instructional strategies that they use. But I also like to think of it as, baking a cake. Just because you have the ingredients, it doesn't mean you have a cake. I could have a pile of sugar and some eggs and some flour, and that doesn't make a cake. You might have, teachers who have engaged in letters training, and they have information and, resources that are aligned to the science of reading. You also might have your evidence-based curriculum that is aligned to the science of reading as the Utah State Board recommends. But just because you have both of these elements, we need to be able to put them together and, and effectively use our resources so that we can see returns and impact on student learning and literacy. So as we've kind of talked about, we grounded ourselves in why we're here in this topic 5 today. So thinking about our tier 2 and tier 3 instruction and how we can improve that. We used our needs assessments at session 1 to identify that this is an area where we can continue to grow in our schools. So if you would like, you can go ahead and find your needs assessment so that we can kind of reorient ourselves in what specifically you need for your tier 2 and tier 3 instructional time. And you can find your needs assessments by going to the Learning Space homepage, scrolling to the very, very bottom of the homepage, finding your specific LEA folder, which is where we house your needs assessments and your change management plan templates. But if you click into your school district, you'll find your needs assessment if you want to kind of revisit that as a guiding force for this independent time. So at this point in time, we're going to send you into your handouts. You have roughly 40 minutes to go through some of the resources that are linked in your handouts. Again, thinking about some of our guiding questions about how can we use evidence-based practices and tools that are going to support us in actually implementing and delivering high quality tier 2 and tier 3 instruction. So if you're in your handout, we're going to find just below our hypothetical scenario, we have all these great links from the USBE. So this is your time to explore some of these documents in a deeper dive. I will say that, if you find that, 40 minutes is not a lot of time to go through every single resource. So if you kind of click into something, maybe do a quick skim over, what it is that you're looking for, if this is aligned to something that is, that it's aligned to something that you're specifically looking for in your tier 2 and tier 3 instruction, you can go ahead and just kind of do a skim or a quick check. They are grouped by, I'm seeing your question, Justin, in the chat. They are grouped by, if you want to select a specific tier 2 or tier 3 curriculum, versus, if you're more interested in building an MTSS structure in your schools, you might start there. And same with here, using data for tier 2 and tier 3 instruction. So you might start there if you're really focused on how do we kind of integrate our assessments into our tier 2 and tier 3 instructional time. But I'll go ahead and mute my mic so that you have 40 minutes of great reflection time. You can take some notes about your documents here in your handout. And again, let us know if you do have any questions as you're going through and exploring some of these documents, but we'll go ahead and put 40 minutes on the clock so that you have some independent time to review.
Any questions, you can just put them in the chat.
got just about under 10 minutes left, so feel free to look at any resources you haven't yet gotten to, take note of any resources you'd like to share about. We'll come back in 9 minutes. Right, and we're back. Thank you, everyone. Hopefully that was some time well spent getting to explore some of those great resources from the USBE. So would love to just create some space for you to share out either in the chat or come off of mute. Which resources did you find were really effective for you that might be applied to your scenario really well? And which resources might help you support the effective implementation of Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction in your school?
Nothing in
Put
the
those in
chat
the-
yet.
oh,
If anybody wants to just get off mute and share.
I'll share. I thought the critical features of the tiered literacy intervention was a really nice tool just in defining the components and of kind of each level. I think it'd be an effective tool to use with teachers to kind of help really define, what's happening at each tier, the frequency, duration, dosage, all of those things. And then including like for fidelity, are we maximizing the OTRs that are occurring in those intervention sessions and not making them too big so that kids are maximizing their time interacting and trying to master those skills?
yeah, thanks, Matt. I love how easy it is for teachers to apply to their situation. Like you said, it's very practical and applicable with best practices.
We do have a couple comments in the chat now. The reading software checklist is super helpful and important us to validate the quality of these resources. The checklist again for software and curriculum, just the overall framework and clear guidelines for each tier is very useful. It's definitely a good guide for administration. Let's see, the list of approved literacy curriculum spreadsheet was helpful to quickly see program components and consider with tier and need alignment.
Yeah, anyone else want to come off of mute and share more about, how you might use these resources with your school?
Well, I had a couple of thoughts. I reviewed the core criteria checklist. Like if you were to actually find a curriculum that you really liked and go through that whole list, I mean, you'd have to have guts to do that because that's like 12 pages, right? So I'm like, wow, I'm just going to use what they have already done for me because I'm that kind of, it's already been done. I like the list that they provided. The thing that I loved the most was the early literacy diagnostic assessment tool. I think that teachers could really benefit from just reading that because it has that FAQ that kind of gives them the rationale and reason why we're doing Acadians in our state, why they have these different assessments. I think that's beneficial to know. I know that we meet these criteriums for our tier 1 instruction, and we just had an adoption this year in our district. And we had 2 adoptions because the one didn't have all the components, and then we have now 2. And then we're getting a tier 2 adoption as well, but that's just more of a site-based decision that we're doing in our school. And my question is like, we're doing all these things in tier 1 and tier 2, but then we have tier 3, and I'm not clear on what they're even doing in my SPED department. I'm not sure if there's I don't hear and I don't know of a clear direction from our district that's saying we use these materials, we use these systematic tools. And so I'm like, I would like to see, because that's something on my radar, because students with disabilities is one of my ATSI categories. And I need to make sure that they are making adequate growth and meeting, getting above that line. And so I can't help but think maybe that's the missing component right there, is just having that systematic tool, and that assessment gives us the list of things that we can use that has been proven effective. So I kind of like that, and it caused me to reflect and think, what are we doing in that area?
Yeah, that's great, Jason. The schools that I work with also use Acadians. And I am a big fan of Acadians. It can be a struggle because a lot of teachers that I work with will refer to the children like, oh, they're in the red, they're in the yellow. But it's so much more than that, because every child, there's a story behind every child, right? So when you look at the data for something like Acadians, you're really able to pick out the students that need that intervention. And, with the progress monitoring, making shifts where necessary. When it comes to special education students and students, with IEPs or even with 504s, you definitely want to have something that is systematic and something that is really consistent for those students, because sometimes even differentiating, your core instruction is just not enough. So I'm glad that you felt that that tool was helpful to you, and definitely encourage that, for you to use that for your goals with trying to make sure that you're getting those kiddos as well.
Yeah, and have those conversations with your district too. If you don't know the resources available, it's possible there, could be some opportunities for clarity. And I know that other leaders in Salt Lake District have, gone through this project and, should be able to answer some good questions about your tier 3 questions.
I'll share a little bit. I
Perfect.
also appreciate the approved curriculum list and was happy to see that everything that our district, of course, has been providing and supporting is on there. And, just backed up all the reasons why. I was happy to see also, of course, that Wilson was on the list. And with my land trust money, I've been trying to invest in having my teachers that want to go through that additional training to get Wilson certified, And it's been really incredible to see how that training has helped them to really boost up their tier 3 intervention skills and, the levels that those kids are at. And so I want to keep on investing. I have 3 more teachers that want to get trained in that for next year. And so it's a little bit of a financial investment, but it's definitely proven to be worth it. Speaking of just some of the challenges with tier 3, and part of the reason why I wanted to participate today is because it is so hard to figure out how to fit in that tier 3 time effectively. And so I'm trying to problem solve that. That's the big challenge for me, is finding the time and the effective way to get that tier 3 instruction embedded in effectively. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think there's never enough time in the day for all of the instruction we want to occur. We also have information if you do want to look into resources from the topic 4, which is specifically focused on the literacy block. And in the K through 12 literacy framework, we do have some kind of sample literacy blocks of what that might look like in K through 2, 3 through 5, and tier 3 is a part of that. So thanks. Great. So let's go ahead and move on so we can get to some application. But definitely glad to hear that these resources are, striking a chord with a lot of you, and hopefully you can bring these back and again communicate to teachers or to district personnel who might be able to kind of align processes and make everyone's lives easier. So we're going to return to our hypothetical scenario, and you're going to play a little bit of a consultant role. Thinking about the resources that you've just explored, we are going to have the chance to think about how you might advise this assistant principal of curriculum and instruction, and how they can support their 3rd grade team to get their MTSS time back on track. So we know that they do have their literacy block with really rich tier 1 instruction, but they do need some support with boosting that tier 2 instructional time and just knowing exactly what students need and getting them the resources that are aligned to the science of reading. So what we're going to do is, in a couple of breakout rooms, you'll have the opportunity to talk to a partner. We are in the note-taking handout in the application to context section. So if you go to that bookmark, it'll take you right to where, oh, my apologies. We're actually in the hypothetical scenario. And then returning to the hypothetical scenario, we have this note-taking space, which I don't think is bookmarked. I apologize. But you'll have just about 10 minutes super quickly to apply some of your thoughts about these resources to how this hypothetical leader could support their teachers in making their tier 2 and tier 3 instruction stronger. So with just about 8 minutes or so, you'll access the change management plan template, which we'll get into for your school context later today. And really what we're focusing on is just these first 2 questions. According to their needs assessment and what they might need for their school, why are they focusing on tier 2 and tier 3 instruction, and what tools and resources from the deep dive guide, the tools that we just reviewed, are going to be most helpful for helping these teachers understand the power of tier 2 and tier 3 instruction. So you don't need to write anything, just consider these questions and what kind of advice you might give to this hypothetical school leader. Any questions before we get started into breakout groups? Okay. Perfect. So to sum up, you're consulting for this hypothetical leader, giving them some resources of how they can support their 3rd grade MTSS team and bolster their tier 2 and tier 3 instruction time. So we'll go into breakout rooms in just a moment. And we'll pop in and out and just think about what you'd like to share as far as advice, and we'll come back just under 10 minutes from now. Okay, so Gloria, just a heads up, I was looking through just the sorry, one second. Right. So for this portion of our session today, we have the exciting opportunity for some dedicated planning time. So, there's never enough time in the day for instruction, and there's also never enough time in the day for planning. So hopefully this gives you a good chunk of time to, really think about what needs to happen and how you can use the resources that we've just explored to support your tier 2 and tier 3 instructional time. So we have about an hour for this time to plan, and we'll close out so we finish right on time at 12. Again, just regrounding in our professional learning norms. Thank you so much for your engagement today and for your proactive communication. I know things pop up, so definitely just let us know if you need to step away for a moment. But otherwise, to the extent possible, we really appreciate when you've been able to engage fully. So as a brief energizer, would love for you to pop an emoji in the chat that maybe describes your personality, maybe describes how you're feeling today. Just keep things a little bit light. Got all sorts of energy with this group today.
I like it.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Oh, awesome. Keep putting those emojis in the chat and we'll move on, but continue to bring the levity. So we do have the bulk of our time for some structured planning time today, and then we'll close out and just make sure we have everything prepared for you that can help set you up for success with you and your teams. So we have a couple of resources for you today. We have some sample change management plans, and we can use those as a resource to see what it might look like for us to put this into practice. We also are going to just walk through our change management plan template so that we have all of the information before we get into planning, again, to set you up for success with what you need. So for this 5 minutes, we have our sample change management plan. If you navigate to your handout, we are now in the application to context section. We have a couple of different change management plan samples. So we have a school level change management plan sample, and we have an LEA level change management plan sample. It's most likely that if you're in this session, the school level change management plan will be most applicable to you. So going into the sample change management plan of your choice, and again, depends on your role, let's take a couple of minutes just to review just part one. So part one is this piece of long-term goal setting, as well as the planning considerations, what you have already kind of talked about as it related to the hypothetical leader and how they can use the resources in their context. We'll talk about part two in session 2B, and that will be next week, March 21st. But again, we are focusing really on part one of our plans. So with this leader, they've thought about some of their long-term goals for their LEA or for their school. They also have their key indicator, which again can be taken straight from the deep dive guide, as well as the success criteria. So as a reminder, we have our deep dive guide. That's kind of our guiding document within this change management for literacy leaders cohort. This is going to give us all of the resources, not only for priority topic 5, but also for every other priority topic, and all of the levers that we can pull to support the science of reading within our literacy instruction. If you do go to priority topic 5, you can see already that there is a key indicator here. We have a learning intention, success criteria, things that you might accomplish if you are focusing on tier 2 and tier 3 instruction as a means of achieving your long-term literacy goals. So we're going to just review this a little bit. This kind of level of detail, we're just skimming at this point, seeing some of the resources from that collection of resources we looked at earlier, as well as maybe some stakeholders that we've talked about. So we talked about the switch framework and how we might be able to motivate people on our team to go along with our plans. But I'll give you just 1 or 2 minutes just to review kind of on your own, and then we'll come back as a full group and we can talk about any questions that you have. So 2 minutes and I'll let you look through this independently. Okay, knowing that's not enough time to deeply read all of the information in this plan, I'm curious what kind of information you got out of it. What are you noticing? What resonates with you for this leader's plan? You can share in the chat, or you can come off of mute.
Nothing in the chat so far.
Fine if we move on. Just wanted to definitely give you all a chance to look into what this might look like. Again, there's quite a lot of detail in here, but we've tried to do our best to, align success criteria and key indicators to what you might anticipate for your specific priority topic and your goals.
Oh, we have one comment. I like the way to establish specific goals for each stakeholder group for each portion of time that it's very specific.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Some great thoughts here, and you'll definitely get a chance to think about your own stakeholders and how they can support you and your goals, and how we can make steps towards achieving our goals.
And how the goals really need to be specific as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so for this chunk of time, really until about 11:50, you'll have just dedicated planning time. We do, hope that this is a good, structured, and focused time for you to really think about what you can best accomplish for your school and for your context. So, to the best extent possible, keep cameras on, email quiet or closed, and no online shopping, which I know might be a temptation for some people. We also have a Jamboard parking lot, which is in your handout. If you'd like to access the handout, the Jamboard is here. So we'll be monitoring that if you have any asynchronous questions for us. Finally, we'll have you in breakout groups with your district level team if you want. So Canyons team members, you can feel free to go into a group with other Canyons team members and plan kind of concurrently. And same with Salt Lake District. I didn't see any other LEAs represented, but I'm happy to create more breakout rooms if you would like. Great. So at this point, you have about 40 minutes to work really specifically on your own change management plan. So thinking about, if you need input from people who are not here, think about how and when you'll be able to get that input from other team members. You also might think about, specific areas where you'd like feedback. So myself and Gloria will be in the main room if you have any questions about the template itself, or if you'd like us to point you to any resources. We'd be happy to support with any thought partnership. So we don't need to upload your plan, but you can access your plan if you're on the learning space. We're going all the way down to LEA folders. And let's go for Canyons. If you're a Canyons school district member, it looks like you have some school folders that will have your change management plans and your needs assessment already in here. So if you do need to make a copy of your change management plan as well, feel free to do so. But at this point, we will leave you to it. We have just under 40 minutes so that you can have some dedicated work time. So I'll open the breakout rooms. If you want to do any collaboration, you can self-select, and we will go ahead and leave you to it. So happy planning.
Let us know if you have any questions.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you had a good time planning, and we're able to be really productive with that time together. We are going to close out the session, but thank you so much for your engagement today. Let's see, moving forward. Okay, we're going to close out, but just to review some of our success criteria for this portion of the day. We have been able to summarize important information about, some resources aligned to our priority topic. So some of those tools from the Utah State Board of Education. We've had some good time. Hopefully you've completed the majority or all of part 1 of your change management plan template. And we've also had the opportunity to kind of work alongside some leaders who are focused on the same questions as us with tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 instruction. So if you have any takeaways that you want to bring back to members of your team at your buildings, or with again, kind of that vertical alignment, your district team or your teachers, feel free to use your handout to record any final takeaways or thoughts. Okay, to close out, I would love to talk a little bit about our source project. So we have the change management, or the community engagement and the science of reading. So this is a really great cohort that runs alongside the change management for literacy leaders cohort. As Gloria mentioned, she works really closely with this team. So Gloria, I would love for you, if you want to share a little bit about this project.
Sure. Basically, this is an opportunity if there are any teachers, literacy coaches, yourselves as administration that would like to participate in our cohort. We have our first cohort going on right now. We are recruiting for our second cohort, and basically coming up with a needs and assessment plan and building out a roadmap to make sure that we are able to not only have goals for our literacy and growing our literacy rates, but also tying in family and community engagements. So having an opportunity to have professional learning in terms of how to make an impact, not only in the classroom, but really have a true partnership with families and the community to make sure that we are really a united front to help our students with their reading. So if there is any interest that you think that any colleagues of yours or colleagues within your school or outside of your school would be interested, our next cohort is actually going to start in August. And you see the code down there at the bottom. You can contact myself or my project manager, Sarah Iannucci, and her email is at the bottom as well. So definitely would love to have more people for our second cohort, and we're really excited about it.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you, Gloria. Yeah, great opportunity. This information will be available in the slide deck, so you can access this through your learning space. So we'll go ahead and move forward, just thinking about what comes next. For homework from this session today, make sure that you complete this part 1 of your change management plan template. With session 2B, we'll be looking into part 2. So those 90-day incremental plans. Those are going to happen next week, next Thursday. We're working through getting some calendar invitations to you, which you'll have by the end of day today. If you do have any updates to part 1 of your plan beyond what you've created today, you can go ahead and create those plans directly, or create those changes directly in your plan, linked in your LEA folder on the learning space. Okay, and finally, with a closing checklist, reviewing our session for next week. Again, I apologize, we do not have calendar invitations quite yet, but we will have a morning session and an afternoon session next week on next Thursday. So we'll have either option available for you to join. It will also be virtual, so we will have that Zoom link available to you. Again, whichever time is best suited for your needs.
Yes.
You might come
Sorry,
away
Karen
from...
had that question about if you're able to switch the PM session for next week if needed.
Perfect. Yeah, great question. I think what we're going to do is, instead of having a specific assignment, is make some Zoom links available. So you can join whichever time works best for you. But we do definitely, would encourage you to use the sign-in sheets. So we do need that attendance tracked so that we can make sure that you have all of your participation tracked. But great question. Finally, for kind of some pre-work to do before session 2B, there are no pre-reading articles, but if you have any kind of to-do lists based on your session, on your planning from the session today, definitely come prepared with some things to do that you might want to incorporate into part 2 of your change management plan. And final thoughts for today, think of a shout out if there's someone who helped you in your planning today. If there's someone who brightened your day with their emoji in the chat, you can think of a shout out. We'll return to those for the last couple of minutes of our time. But in the meantime, we do have just a final professional learning survey. We encourage you to provide your thoughts about how we can best serve your needs as district and school leaders. So you can access our professional learning survey on the learning space with this bit.ly link or with the QR code. And all of this information will help us, adapt our content so we can better suit your needs and support you in your planning. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. And then as you have shout outs, go ahead and share them in the chat or come off of mute. So thanks, everybody.
I'll also just put the attendance in the chat just in case anyone has not signed in. Please make sure you sign in so you get credit for your attendance.
Thanks, Gloria.
That's some great shout outs. I'm glad you've been able to get some help from your colleagues. It's great to see.
I do have to close the Zoom right at noon, but thank you so much for your time, everyone. Feel free to continue filling out the feedback survey and let us know if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.